The peaceful hum of Earth was shattered in an instant. Massive ships, impossibly large and unlike anything humans had ever imagined, descended from the sky, blocking out the sun. They were the size of entire cities, their sleek metallic surfaces gleaming coldly in the atmosphere. These ships were not from Earth, and their arrival marked the beginning of an invasion that would shake the planet to its very core. The Trilos, an alien race from a distant star system, had come to Earth with a singular purpose: to harvest the planet's resources to save their dying world. With technology far beyond anything humanity had, the Trilos were confident that Earth would fall under their control without resistance. Their ships hovered ominously over the cities, and within moments, they unleashed their devastating weapons. Cities that had once been filled with the bustle of life were now reduced to rubble. Buildings collapsed into piles of dust and debris, while a dark, swirling energy engulfed the land. Power grids failed, communication systems were severed, and the skies turned a foreboding shade of gray. Panic spread like wildfire as people ran, not knowing where to go or what to do. Governments scrambled to respond, but the truth was undeniable. There was no defense against such advanced technology. The military launched every weapon in its arsenal, but nothing had any effect. The Trilos had weapons that could flatten entire armies with a mere gesture, and humanity's finest efforts were nothing more than a brief distraction. The world was powerless. The gap in technology between the Trilos and humans was so vast that it felt as if the invasion had been inevitable. The very air felt different now, thick with the weight of impending doom. People spoke of surrender, of trying to negotiate with the invaders, but the Trilos made it clear that their intentions were not to coexist. They had come to take what they needed, without care for the fate of the planet or its people. Desperation began to creep into the hearts of every human. There seemed to be no escape, no hope for survival. Earth was at the mercy of an alien force that didn't even see the need to negotiate. But in the midst of this despair, a small flicker of resistance began to grow. It started in the shadows, unnoticed by the invaders who believed their victory was certain. A group of military officers, scientists, and civilians, ordinary people thrown together by circumstance, began to gather. They knew that fighting back would be nearly impossible, but they refused to give up without trying. Using what little they had, they began to plan. They didn't have the powerful weapons or advanced technology that the Trilos possessed. They had nothing but their minds and their will to survive. Among them was a former military strategist, Captain James Alden, a man whose name had been forgotten by the world, but whose brilliance in tactics could make a difference. He didn't see the situation as hopeless, he saw it as a challenge. In secret underground bunkers, away from the alien eyes that hovered above the Earth, this small group began to work. They scrounged for old weapons, repurposed broken-down technology, and began to study the Trilos movements. It was slow, grueling work, but the resistance was determined. Every small victory, every tiny piece of alien technology they could reverse engineer was seen as a win. They couldn't match the Trilos' firepower, but they had something more valuable: the ability to think outside the box, to outsmart an enemy who underestimated them. As the Trilos moved to establish control over the planet, the resistance quietly sabotaged their efforts, breaking into supply lines, disabling communication systems, and gathering information. The world might have been at its lowest point, but, in these hidden corners of Earth, the spirit of resistance was born. A quiet, unwavering belief spread among the people. Humanity was not ready to fall without a fight. It wasn't much yet, just a handful of brave men and women working in secret, but it was enough to plant the seeds of something greater. The why? Aliens might have thought they were the superior force, but they had underestimated one thing: the resilience of the human spirit. The fight had just begun, and though it was uncertain, it was a fight humanity was ready to face. It wasn't much, But for the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of hope, a hope that was more powerful than any weapon the Trilos had. Despite the overwhelming defeat that Earth had suffered, a quiet determination began to take root in the hearts of the survivors. The skies above still shimmered with the presence of the massive Trilos ships, but humanity, though shaken, was not broken. In small pockets scattered across the globe, men and women who refused to give up began to regroup. They no longer thought of retreating, of surrendering to the alien invaders. Instead, they began to plot their survival, and perhaps even a way to fight back. Every corner of the world seemed to be filled with chaos, but in the shadows, something stronger was emerging: the human spirit. While the Trilos may have controlled the skies and the cities, they had overlooked one crucial fact: humans were adaptable. Those who had survived the initial wave of destruction began to improvise, using whatever they could find. Old military vehicles, broken-down weapons, and even the wreckage from fallen alien ships became tools of resistance. In hidden laboratories and underground bunkers, a group of scientists, engineers, and military veterans worked tirelessly, taking apart alien technology piece by piece. With no formal training in advanced alien mechanics, they relied on their creativity and resourcefulness to reverse engineer the tech. Slowly, they began to build weapons of their own, rudimentary at first, but enough to strike a blow against the invaders. A new sense of hope began to grow as this newfound ingenuity took shape. The first real victory came when a small, makeshift resistance cell set up an ambush on an alien patrol. Armed with nothing but stolen alien energy rifles and repurposed explosives, they struck with surprising speed and precision, taking down a group of Trilos soldiers before they even knew what hit them. The Trilos, who had once believed themselves untouchable, now faced a growing realization: they were not invincible. The humans were learning, adapting, and finding ways to strike back. This victory, though small, ignited a spark in the hearts of people everywhere. Resistance cells began to form all over the world, each victory feeding the next. The human spirit, wounded but not defeated, found its strength once more. Amidst this rising hope, one figure began to stand out above the rest: Captain James Alden. Once a highly respected military strategist, Alden had retired long before the invasion, seeking a quieter life away from the battlefield. But now, with the world on the brink of extinction, he was called back to duty. His reputation had faded with time, but his experience and tactical brilliance were just what humanity needed in their darkest hour. When the resistance leaders sought out someone to unite them, Alden was the obvious choice. He had spent his career studying the art of unconventional warfare, and now that knowledge would become invaluable. Under Captain Alden's leadership, the resistance grew bolder. His strategies were based not on brute force, but on cleverness and cunning. He understood the Trilos better than anyone. He knew that their greatest strength was their arrogance. They saw humans as weak, predictable, and easy to subdue. But Alden used that against them. He focused on guerrilla tactics, hitting them where they least expected it. The Trilos might have had advanced weaponry and overwhelming numbers, but they lacked the ability to think in the same way humans could. Where the aliens relied on their superior technology, Alden relied on human creativity. His first major plan was a daring raid on an alien supply depot. Using the knowledge gathered from previous skirmishes and intercepted communications, Alden led a team of resistance fighters deep into enemy territory. They used the terrain to their advantage, striking quickly and vanishing before the aliens could react. The attack was a success, and the Trilos were left stunned. The resistance had not only survived, but was beginning to win. It was a moment of triumph, showing the world that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity could still rise up. Alden's success didn't go unnoticed. As his reputation spread, more and more people flocked to his cause. Under his guidance, The Resistance began to coordinate attacks on a global scale, targeting Trilos supply lines, communication hubs, and energy sources. Each victory was a reminder that no matter how powerful the invaders were, they had underestimated one crucial thing. Humans never gave up. They fought back with everything they had, no matter the cost. And in doing so, they had awakened something the Trilos could never have anticipated, a will to fight that was stronger than any weapon. As the Resistance grew, so did the realization that the war was not over. But now, for the first time, humans knew they had a chance. The Trilos had invaded Earth for its resources, but they had found something far more dangerous: the human spirit. The battle for Earth had only just begun, and the Trilos would soon learn that they had awakened a force they could not defeat. The Resistance, once a small and scattered group of survivors, had grown into a force to be reckoned with. While the Trilos had initially underestimated humanity's resilience, they soon realized that Earth was not the defenseless planet they had believed it to be. The Trilos' superior technology had failed to crush the Resistance as easily as they expected. In fact, the humans were becoming more coordinated, more daring in their attacks, and increasingly effective at sabotaging the alien invasion. But it wasn't just their determination or strategy that was driving this change. There was something deeper at work, something the Trilos had never anticipated. Amidst their victories, the human Resistance made an astounding discovery. A group of scientists, working tirelessly to study the wreckage of alien technology, uncovered a shocking genetic anomaly. Humans, they realized, possessed an innate ability to adapt to foreign technology in a way that no other species could. This wasn't just about cleverness or ingenuity. It was something built into their very DNA. The ability to interface with alien technology was not learned, it was instinctive. While most species would have struggled to even comprehend the complex systems of the Trilos, humans could interact with them almost as if they were born for it. The alien devices that once seemed so advanced, so alien, now appeared almost familiar to those who tried to use them. It was a gift that no one had predicted, a silent strength embedded deep in the human genome. But the most astonishing discovery was yet to come. As humans continued to expose themselves to alien technology, some began to experience strange and seemingly impossible changes. Initially, it was subtle, an increase in physical strength, heightened senses, and a strange, unexplained connection to technology. But as the weeks passed, these abilities grew more pronounced. A soldier who had once struggled to lift heavy gear now seemed able to carry immense loads with ease. A scientist who had barely understood the alien tech now found himself effortlessly deciphering its inner workings. And perhaps most startling of all, some Resistance members began to experience a form of telepathic communication, their minds somehow able to link with one another over great distances. These abilities, once thought to be beyond human reach, were now becoming a reality. Some Resistance fighters even began to bond with alien technology, manipulating it with a level of skill that the Trilos could not replicate. The human genome had unlocked something extraordinary, and it was turning the tide in the battle for Earth. The Trilos, who had long relied on their technological supremacy, now faced a new kind of adversary, one that could adapt and evolve in ways they had never imagined. As the Resistance's newfound powers grew, so did the tension among the Trilos' leadership. Their invasion, once expected to be swift and decisive, was beginning to falter. The humans, with their unexpected abilities, were starting to take back territory, disrupt supply lines, and sabotage key Trilos operations. The Trilos' leaders, who had once been united in their confidence, began to argue among themselves. Some believed that the humans were merely lucky, that their adaptation to alien technology was nothing more than a temporary fluke. Others, however, began to fear that humanity's hidden potential was something far more dangerous. If the humans could harness this ability to its fullest, the Trilos might find themselves facing a foe unlike any they had ever encountered. Whispers of this new power spread across Trilos command centers, unsettling even their most seasoned officers. The humans, once thought to be nothing more than weak and predictable, were proving to be an entirely different kind of threat, one that could learn, adapt, and evolve faster than any of them had anticipated. The Trilos' leaders began to reconsider their strategies, unsure how to proceed. Some advocated for a more brutal approach, believing that crushing humanity's spirit would end the resistance. Others, however, feared that such an approach might only strengthen the humans' resolve and accelerate their newfound powers. The Trilos were facing a dilemma. How could they defeat an enemy that not only refused to surrender but seemed to grow stronger by the day? Back on Earth, the resistance was more determined than ever. The mysterious powers that had begun to awaken within them had become a symbol of hope, fueling their fight with renewed strength. Humans, it seemed, had something the Trilos could never replicate: the ability to adapt and overcome, even when faced with the impossible. As the Trilos struggled to make sense of this unforeseen change, the humans were preparing for their next move, knowing that the true battle had only just begun. What the invaders did not understand was that in their quest to strip Earth of its resources, they had awakened something far more powerful than they had ever imagined, a force of nature that was humanity itself. The resistance, emboldened by their recent successes and the mysterious powers they had begun to unlock, prepared for their most daring mission yet. Captain James Alden, whose strategic brilliance had already turned the tide in several skirmishes, now set his sights on a high-stakes target, a massive Trilos facility located deep within enemy territory. This facility was rumored to be a central hub for the alien invaders, a place where their most advanced technology was being developed. It was the heart of the Trilos operations, a place that held the key to understanding their overwhelming technological superiority. If the resistance could infiltrate it, they might find a way to tip the balance in humanity's favor. The mission was fraught with danger. The base was heavily guarded, surrounded by layers of advanced defenses that had been designed to repel even the most sophisticated assaults. The Trilos had learned from their previous encounters with humanity and were prepared for any attempts to infiltrate. But Alden's team, though smaller and less equipped, had something the aliens didn't: the element of surprise. The resistance had honed their ability to adapt to alien technology, using it against its creators. With stealth and strategy, they infiltrated the perimeter, moving through the shadows and using their newfound abilities to bypass security systems. The air was thick with tension as they made their way deeper into the facility, each step taking them closer to the heart of the beast. As they delved deeper into the facility, they encountered the full might of Trilos technology. Deadly automated, sentries, force fields, and traps lay in wait, but Alden's tactical mind anticipated their every move. The resistance fought their way through, using every advantage they had: guerrilla tactics, quick strikes, and the element of surprise. Despite the overwhelming odds, they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. It wasn't long before they reached the heart of the facility, where they discovered something no one had expected: a series of secret labs and research chambers hidden from the Trilos' public operations. Inside these labs, the Resistance made a shocking discovery. The Trilos had not just come to Earth to plunder its resources. They were desperately trying to use Earth's biodiversity to fix a catastrophic flaw in their own species. Over the centuries, the Trilos had developed a genetic condition that had slowly been wiping them out. Their once advanced civilization was now in the grip of a slow extinction, unable to reproduce effectively and facing a dwindling future. The resources of Earth, particularly its genetic diversity, were their last hope. The Trilos had been experimenting with the planet's flora and fauna, attempting to reverse their genetic decline by using Earth's life forms to engineer a cure. They had not come for conquest alone, but for survival, a fact that had remained hidden from the humans until now. Alden and his team stood in stunned silence as they processed the gravity of what they had uncovered. The aliens' arrogance had kept this truth concealed, but now it was clear. The Trilos were not invaders with an endless supply of resources, but a desperate species teetering on the brink of extinction. They had come to Earth not as conquerors, but as a dying race looking for a last chance at survival. This revelation shifted everything the Resistance had believed about the invasion. The Trilos had believed their technology would give them the edge, but their true weakness lay not in their weapons or their ships, but in their ethical decay. They had sacrificed their morals and their humanity in pursuit of survival, and now, that desperation was their greatest vulnerability. Alden's mind raced as he realized the full implications of this discovery. The Trilos' desperation was their weakness, one that could be exploited. It was no longer just a war for resources. It was a war for the future of both species. The Trilos were not just invaders. They were a dying people, clinging to their last hope. And now, the Resistance had the knowledge they needed to turn the tables. It wasn't just their technology or their strength that would win this fight. It was their values, their humanity, and their will to survive. With this new knowledge in hand, Alden and his team made their escape, their hearts heavy with the burden of the truth. The assault on the Trilos facility had given them the edge they needed, but it had also opened their eyes to the darker side of the invaders. As they left the facility, they knew that the next phase of the war would be unlike anything they had faced before. The Trilos were no longer just invaders. They were a dying species desperate to survive at any cost. The heart of the beast had been exposed, and now the Resistance had the power to strike where it would hurt the most. As the Resistance continued to grow stronger, something unexpected began to happen within the ranks of the Trilos. The revelation about their species' desperate struggle for survival, uncovered by Captain Alden's team, had a ripple effect that none could have foreseen. While many of the Trilos remained focused on their mission of conquest, a growing number of them began to question their leaders' methods. The truth about the Trilos' motives, that they were not invaders driven by greed or imperialism, but a dying race in search of a cure for their genetic extinction, spread through the alien ranks. Some, struck by the revelation, began to feel sympathy for the humans they had once viewed as inferior. These defectors, disillusioned with their leaders' ruthless pursuit of survival at any cost, began to provide critical intelligence to the Resistance, revealing weaknesses in the alien infrastructure and secrets that had previously been hidden from the humans. This shift within the Trilos ranks created a fracture in their unity. While their leadership remained as determined as ever to secure Earth's resources, there were growing numbers of alien soldiers and officers who no longer believed in the cause. The Resistance began to make use of this unexpected advantage. The information provided by the defectors allowed humanity to target the Trilos' most vulnerable points: their supply lines, communication networks, and energy sources. The strategic advantage was now in the hands of the humans. The war, once a fight for survival, had shifted. What had been a battle of defense, humanity scrambling to protect its very existence, was now a full-scale offensive. The Resistance was no longer on the back foot, but taking the fight directly to the enemy. Across the globe, the growing success of the Resistance sparked a wave of uprisings. No longer were the humans divided by borders and nations. What had begun as a series of isolated pockets of rebellion quickly transformed into a unified global movement. Resistance fighters in one part of the world communicated with those in another, sharing intelligence and strategies, coordinating attacks across continents. The Trilos, once confident in their overwhelming technological dominance, now faced a human force that was organized, strategic, and growing stronger with each passing day. Cities that had once been under the alien boot were now rising up. The oppressed, inspired by the success of the Resistance, joined in the fight. Humanity's spirit was no longer just surviving, it was thriving. The first true turning point came when a coordinated attack on a major Trilos stronghold succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. The alien base, a fortress that had been thought impregnable, fell in a blaze of human ingenuity and courage. Using the intelligence from the Trilos, defectors the Resistance launched a series of calculated strikes that crippled the base's defenses. Despite the overwhelming odds, they succeeded in taking control of the facility, marking the first large-scale victory for humanity. The fall of the stronghold was a signal to the world that the Trilos were not invincible. It was a symbol of hope, proof that the humans had the power to push back, and the momentum was shifting in their favor. News of this victory spread like wildfire, sparking further uprisings across the planet. People who had once cowered in fear now rallied behind the Resistance. The Trilos' grip on Earth was weakening, and with each victory, humanity grew bolder. The aliens, who had thought their invasion would be a quick and decisive conquest, now found themselves facing a united and increasingly powerful foe. The Resistance's newfound strength, both in numbers and in spirit, became an unstoppable force. It was clear that Earth's fight was no longer about survival, but about reclaiming the planet, driving the invaders off, and ensuring humanity's future. As the Resistance celebrated this momentous victory, Captain Alden stood before his troops, his mind already focused on the next phase of the war. The road ahead would not be easy, but the first large-scale victory had shown that humanity could win. The tide had begun to turn, and there was no turning back. With the Trilos in disarray and the global Resistance stronger than ever, the war was entering a new phase, one where Earth's forces no longer fought to survive, but to win. And for the first time since the invasion began, it seemed that victory might just be within their grasp. The tide of war had shifted dramatically in humanity's favor. After months of relentless resistance and mounting victories, the Trilos found themselves cornered and desperate. Faced with the growing strength of Earth's united forces, they decided to unleash their final, most devastating weapon, one that could undo everything the Resistance had fought for. The Trilos revealed their trump card, a device capable of collapsing Earth's magnetic field. The weapon was a technological marvel, one that could cause seismic destruction on a global scale, weakening the planet's core and rendering Earth defenseless. If activated, it would create massive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and a catastrophic collapse of Earth's protective magnetic shield. The planet, as the Trilos knew, would be destroyed from the inside out, and nothing could stop them from taking the resources they so desperately needed. As the first signs of the weapon's activation appeared, humanity realized the dire stakes. The Resistance, still reeling from the previous battles but now more united than ever, knew they had to act fast. The final stand for Earth's survival had begun. Captain James Alden, whose strategic brilliance had guided them this far, was, once again, thrust into the center of the fight. He and his team had no choice but to launch a daring counterattack. The weapon was located deep beneath one of the Trilos' last strongholds, nestled within the heart of a mountain range, heavily guarded by both alien forces and advanced automated defenses. It was humanity's last chance to stop the device before it could cause irreversible damage to the planet. The clock was ticking. As Alden and his team infiltrated the base, they encountered the Trilos' most advanced defenses yet: laser turrets, shockwave generators, and force fields that seemed impenetrable. But humanity had adapted. Using their growing understanding of alien technology, they fought their way through, relying on their ingenuity and newfound abilities. Each step took them closer to the heart of the facility, where the weapon lay waiting. It was the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If they failed, the entire planet would be lost. Inside the heavily fortified core of the facility, the Resistance found themselves face to face with the weapon, a massive, swirling device humming with raw power. It was a thing of terror, capable of changing the very nature of the planet itself. The Trilos had designed it to be unstoppable, and yet the humans were here, standing against it with nothing but their courage and their will to survive. As they worked quickly to disable the device, the Trilos launched one final desperate counteroffensive. The aliens threw everything they had left at the humans, hoping to halt their progress. But the resistance was determined. They fought not just for survival, but for the future of their world, for the lives of everyone who had ever called Earth. Helmet in a race against time, humanity's resolve was tested like never before. The resistance, though outnumbered and outgunned, showed the world the true strength of human unity. Every soldier, every scientist, and every civilian who had joined the fight worked together to disable the weapon. There were moments of chaos and moments of sacrifice, but through it all, the human spirit burned bright. Despite the alien forces pressing in, they held fast, refusing to back down. It was their greatest challenge yet, but it was also their finest hour. And then, in a flash of brilliance and sheer determination, Captain Alden and his team managed to deactivate the weapon. The device, once capable of bringing Earth to its knees, now lay powerless. The alien forces, seeing their final plan unravel before their eyes, faltered. With the weapon neutralized, the Trilos lost their last edge, and their remaining forces began to crumble. The resistance had done it. They had saved Earth. As the dust settled and the battlefield fell silent, humanity stood victorious. The final battle had been won, but the cost had been high. The planet had been on the brink of annihilation, but the unity and resilience of its people had pulled them back from the edge. It was a victory forged in the fires of desperation, a triumph of human will over the most advanced and ruthless invaders the world had ever seen. As Captain Alden looked out over the shattered remnants of the alien stronghold, he knew that this victory was not just about saving Earth. It was about proving that, no matter the odds, humanity would never give up, never surrender, and never stop fighting for its future. The Trilos had come to Earth expecting to take everything, but what they found was something far stronger than technology or weapons. They found the heart of humanity, a force that could not be defeated. The war was over. The Trilos had been defeated, and Earth had been saved, but the cost was high. Entire cities had been destroyed, millions of lives lost, and the scars of war would take years to heal. Yet, despite the destruction, the spirit of humanity remained unbroken. The resistance, once a ragtag group of desperate rebels, had now become the heroes of the world. They had fought not just for survival, but for something greater, for the future of their planet and their place in the universe. Captain James Alden and his comrades, whose names would be etched in history forever, stood as symbols of humanity's resilience, courage, and ingenuity. Theirs was a legacy of hope, of a fight that seemed impossible, yet had been won. As the world began to rebuild, humanity was faced with the daunting task of not only recovering from the war, but also coming to terms with the aftermath. The surviving Trilos, now refugees on a planet they had once sought to conquer, were left to rebuild their lives under human oversight. They were no longer invaders, but survivors of a species that had lost its way. Under the guidance of Earth's leaders, the Trilos were given the opportunity to rebuild, but with strict conditions. There would be no more wars, no more attempts to take Earth's resources. The human race had shown them the consequences of unchecked ambition, and now, the Trilos had no choice but to live in peace alongside their conquerors. The once invincible empire of the Trilos had been humbled, forced to rely on human compassion and wisdom for their survival. The power dynamic had shifted, and it was clear that humanity would play a pivotal role in the future of the galaxy. Meanwhile, Earth's global alliance began to heal. The nations that had once been divided by politics, resources, and ideologies now stood united under a single banner. The scars of the war were still fresh, but humanity had learned the value of unity. They had fought not as separate nations but as one people, and this shared experience bound them together in a way that nothing else could. The world, once torn apart by conflict and strife, was now preparing for a new era of cooperation, innovation, and hope. Earth had proven itself not just as a survivor, but as a force to be reckoned with, a force that would shape the future of galactic politics. As peace settled over the planet, the eyes of the galaxy turned toward Earth. No longer would humanity be seen as weak, vulnerable, or defenseless. They had fought back against an advanced alien empire, and they had won. This victory was not just a testament to human strength, it was a message to the galaxy that Earth was a new power, one that could hold its own among the stars. Humanity's unity, ingenuity, and courage had earned them the respect of those who had once looked down on them. Earth was no longer just a small, insignificant planet on the edge of the galaxy. It had become a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when people came together to fight for a common cause. But as Earth celebrated its victory, Captain Alden knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were countless other worlds out there, some with their own conflicts, their own struggles. Humanity, once a victim, was now poised to become a leader that could guide the galaxy toward a brighter, more peaceful future. The war with the Trilos had taught them many lessons, and it had shown them the strength that lay in their unity. They had the potential to shape the future of the stars, to forge alliances, and to lead in a way that no one had ever imagined. In the years that followed, Earth began to take its place among the galactic powers. It was a new dawn for humanity, one filled with hope, promise, and the knowledge that they were no longer just survivors of an invasion, but leaders in their own right. Captain Alden, now a hero of legend, watched as his people began to chart their course toward the stars. The Resistance, whose sacrifices had secured Earth's future, would never be forgotten. Their names would live on in the history of a world that had not just survived, but had risen to lead the galaxy. The journey was far from over, but humanity was ready. They had faced the impossible, and now they were ready to face whatever the future held, together.